full tackle Laremy Tunsil from the Houston Texans, sources telling our Adam Schefter. Now, Washington will send 4 picks to Houston for Tunsil, 3rd and 7th rounders in 2025, 2nd and 4th in 2026. The Commanders also will receive a 4th rounder this spring from Houston. Now, the Commanders have been active, obviously, this offseason, also acquiring Deebo Samuel Sr. and the previously mentioned Tunsil to bolster their offense. They also re-signed tight end Zach Ertz, linebacker Bobby Wagner, while also adding defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw to the defense. Now, this just in, the Eagles are trading safety CJ Gardner-Johnson to the Texans for left guard Kenyon Green. So just more moves, and the NFC East folks are not playing out there. Shannon, should Philly be worried about Washington?
Well, for me, like when we were the champion, we didn't really worry about what somebody else was doing because we know what we had and we know if we took care of what we're supposed to. I like what the Commanders are doing. You see what they're doing, Stephen A. and Canty? They're like, we got our quarterback on a rookie contract. Did you see what Josh Allen just got? Imagine what we're going to have to play in another year, 2 years. That's the number. If Dak is getting 60, by the time this contract come up, it's going to be 65, 70. Let's go ahead and put a bid in right now to try to surround him with as much talent as we possibly can and make a run for it. And I like the moves that they made. I like the re-signing of Wags. I like Ertz coming back. I like adding Deebo to the mix, another playmaker. That's a jack that you have to use in a lot of unconventional ways. You hand it to him, you toss it to him, and you run bubble screens and things of that nature because he's that dynamic with the ball in his hands. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm not worried about them, bro. My offensive line, if they get Micah Parsons comes back, that offensive line, Saquon is going to be even more motivated. Jalen Hurts, that defense. Now they've lost some guys, some depth on the defensive line. But if I'm the Eagles, I don't concern myself with other people, what they're doing. I just worry about what we're doing.
I agree with you with that somewhat because primarily your offense remains intact. Eagles' offensive line is expected to be the same. Saquon Barkley obviously isn't going anywhere. Neither is Jalen Hurts. All right, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And, we get what they bring to the table. Defensively, you could be a bit compromised. What I'm looking at, however, that doesn't negate the fact that Washington is addressing needs and moving in a forward direction. In Tunsil, in Deebo Samuel, remember, you're 22nd in pass blocking last year. You're 28th in run blocking this past season as well. So you're addressing those needs, okay? You got a guy that can catch in between the numbers in the Deebo because we know, what McLaurin could do on the outside. We know what a kind of a big-time wideout he is. So we like what we're seeing in that regard. And then Jayden Daniels, obviously, let's not forget he was sacked 47 times last year. So you got to make sure that you do something about that. You want to preserve this brother to position him to do some of the things that he can do, even though some of the sacks were not the fault of the offensive line. In the end, I like what I'm seeing Washington do. I think it's in a forward direction. They deserve credit for it. The flip side to it, though, is that the reigning defending Super Bowl champions just look far superior in the NFC Championship game. And even though some ground in a lot of people's eyes may have been made, it's only minimal in the grand scheme of things. So I agree with you, Shannon.
Well, here's the thing. There was only one team that beat the Philadelphia Eagles after their Week 5 bye, and that was the Washington Commanders. Now, folks want to go to the place, Jalen Hurts
got hurt that game.
Jalen Hurts got hurt. But somebody had to knock Jalen Hurts out the game. That was the Washington Commanders. That was their defense, right? Led by All-Pro Bobby Wagner, who just re-signed. So I like what the Washington Commanders are doing, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They needed to add that toughness to that group. Deebo Samuels fits the bill. He is a tone setter. And then, of course, upgrading the offensive line with Laremy Tunsil. You got to be able to protect your quarterback. You also need to be able to have some semblance of a run game because your quarterback can't be your leading rusher at the end of the year. So I think adding Deebo, adding Laremy Tunsil takes a lot of the load off of Jayden Daniels. And the more important thing that it does, it gives Cliff Kingsbury the opportunity to have more versatility in terms of how he calls the game, the different things that he can do. Everybody talks about the innovations that we saw with the Detroit Lions with Ben Johnson. Well, Cliff Kingsbury has a lot of that same stuff in his bag. I just don't know that he had the players to execute it last year. So being able to add Deebo Samuel to play alongside Terry McLaurin, and then, of course, the safety blanket that is Zach Ertz, who's returning, I think that's going to be huge in terms of the Washington Commanders actually being able to challenge the Philadelphia Eagles. I would say this, over the next 5 years, if you're picking quarterbacks in the conference to buy stock in, I'd have a hard time picking anybody over the guy they got in Washington under center.
All right, we're leaving it there.
His team trades for 5-time Pro Bowler Laramie Tunsil from Houston. We talked about this earlier. The conversation here was about whether or not the Commanders have closed the gap on Philadelphia. They have certainly been very aggressive during this free agent period. The Dallas Cowboys, as usual, have not been. And so after this move, the Tunsil trade was announced, Micah Parsons, as he has a tendency to do, weighed in as only he can. He quote tweeted Adam Schefter reporting the trade with the letters WTF, which stand for why the face?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So here's what I would say. Here is my message to you, Micah. Get used to it. You can get the huge money in Dallas, but if you are sitting there saying, well, why are all these other teams signing all these other really good players when we obviously need them? The answer is your team doesn't do that. That's not the way they do business in Dallas, and it has cost them, and it will continue to. So, Micah, I understand you want to be there, but I think you have to make up your own mind. Do I want to be one of the biggest stars in the NFL? Because the Cowboys will make you that. Or do I want to be on a championship team? Because right now the Cowboys feel about as far away from that as almost anyone in the entire league. Orlovsky, what did you think of what Micah Parsons tweeted yesterday?
Well, he knows he's got to go against Tunsil a bunch now. The Cowboys are in the last 3 seasons 13th in cash spending. They've gone up almost $3 billion in value. That's an owner statistic. The value of the organization continues to rise. Their willingness to spend money continues to stay kind of average or plateaued. And I think Mike is at the point of going, how come I'm in an organization that doesn't truly feel like they want to go win a championship?
What do you think?
You're saying Micah should request a trade?
No, I'm not saying he should request a trade, but I think what winds up happening is he gets a monstrous contract. We talked all day yesterday about how, well, Myles Garrett's contract means Micah's going to get paid even more than that, and he has suggested he might take a little less money, but whatever it is, he's going to be extremely highly paid and deserves to be because he's an unbelievable player. But they have completely mismanaged their roster. They should have signed Dak way before they did. They should have signed CD way before they did. They got to take care of the Micah Parsons situation, and they are going to be so hamstrung that once again they continue not to make any meaningful moves in free agency because that's just not what they do. And right this minute, it feels like they are a distant third in the NFC East with no hope to move up.
Not only third, but they spent last season watching the NFC Championship game
Correct.
with the 2 teams that are in front of them.
Right.
And that's the ultimate insult, basically, when you're a team in a division and the championship game of the conference are 2 teams from your division. It's an embarrassing thing, and that's just a reality the Cowboys are going to have to get used to.
I would just be sick to my stomach if I'm